So in this lesson, we are going to talk about forwards and backwards distributive property, but this time we are going to add variables into it. And so we're going to do a quick review of forwards distributive property, a quick review of backwards distributive property, and then I'm going to show you how to add some variables. All right, so let's take a look at forwards distributive property one more time. So I'm going to distribute the 3 to the 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Bring down my subtraction sign. And then distribute the 3 to the 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 18 minus 15 is 3. All right, next problem. Distribute the 4 to the 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Bring down my plus sign. Distribute the 4 to the 7. And 4 times 7 is 28. 8 plus 28 is 36. For the third problem, we're going to distribute the 2 to the 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Bring down my addition sign. And then distribute the 2 to the 12. 2 times 12 is 24. And then 8 plus 24 is going to be 32. For the last one, we're going to distribute the 5 to the 10. 5 times 10 is 50. Bring down my subtraction sign. And then distribute the 5 to the 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 50 minus 15 is 35. So that was a quick review of forwards distributive property with just integers, just numbers. Now let's do a quick review of backwards distributive property, okay? So we need to find our GCF with backwards distributive property. So our GCF of 66 and 22, it's not 11. A lot of you would think 11 at first glance. It's actually 22. So we need to set up our forwards distributive property, and our operation is subtraction, so that's what we need to put inside. We put our GCF on the outside, which is 22. 66 divided by 22 is 3. 22 divided by 22 is 1. So our answer is 22, and then 3 minus 1 inside the parentheses. All right, let's take a look at our next problem. 12 plus 24, we need to find our GCF. Our GCF here is 12. And then we're going to set up our forwards distributive property. This time we have addition on the inside. So we're going to put 12 on the outside. So 12 divided by 12 is 1. 24 divided by 12 is 2. And then I'm just going to rewrite it a little nicer right here. All right. Let's take a look at our next one. 42 minus 28. So we need to find our GCF. You would think it's 7, but it's actually not. It's going to be 14. And if we made our factor trees, we would see that. But since we're reviewing, I'll tell you it's 14. So I'm going to set up my forwards distributive property. My operation is subtraction, so that's what I'm going to put inside my parentheses. I'm going to put 14 on the outside. 42 divided by 14 is 3, and 28 divided by 14 is 2. And so I'm going to rewrite it nicely right here. All right, and then for our last review problem, 64 plus 16. The GCF here is going to be 16. Set up my forwards distributive property. The addition sign is on the inside. 16 goes on the outside. 64 divided by 16 is 4. 16 divided by 16 is 1. And then I'm just going to rewrite it for my final answer so I can box it in. Alright, so now that we did a quick review of forwards and backwards, let's go ahead and take a look at what this will look like once I add variables to it. So let's look at forwards distributive property, okay? So there's only one step to forwards distributive property with variables. So here is the original problem. 4 parentheses x plus 5, alright? So what you're going to do is you're going to distribute the term on the outside to the terms on the inside of the parentheses. So in this case, what number is on the outside? 4. What are the two terms on the inside? X and 5. So the 4 is going to distribute to the x first, and it's going to distribute to the 5 second. Now, when you multiply 4 times x, you don't know what x is. And so it's not like multiplying 4 times 2 and you know that the answer is 8. So how do we show multiplication with a letter and a number like we've been talking about all year long? You put them next door to each other like this, and the number always goes first. So it's going to be 4x. Then you bring down your plus sign, and then you distribute to your second one. So 4 times 5 is 20. This right here is your final answer. You cannot combine them. You cannot add those two together and make 24x. You just can't do it. 4x is a totally different thing than 20, which we're going to talk about in the next lesson. You cannot put them together. Anything with an x cannot combine together with a regular number. Just the same like if it had a k or a y or a w. It cannot combine with a regular number. Okay? So, let's do a couple examples of that before I show you backwards distributive property. So here I'm going to take the 4, which is on the outside, and I'm going to distribute it to the y. So 4 times y is going to be 4y. My operation is plus, so I'm going to bring that down. And then 4 times 7 is 28. I cannot go any further. That is my final answer, because this has a y and this is a regular number. Let's take a look at the next one. I have a 3 on the outside. That's what I'm going to distribute. Now I'm distributing 3 times 3f. I am going to multiply the 3 times this 3, and I'm going to keep the f. So 3 times 3f is 9f. I have a subtraction sign on the inside, and then I'm going to multiply 3 times 2, which is going to be 6. That is my final answer. If one of them has a variable attached to it, I cannot subtract it or add it to another one. All right, here's 5, and I'm going to distribute it out to the two terms. 5 times 7 is 35. I have an addition sign, so I'm going to bring that down. And then 5 times 2m is going to be 10m. That is my final answer. I cannot combine it any further. Here I have a 9 that I'm going to distribute. 9 times 11d is 99d. I have a subtraction sign on the inside, so I'm going to bring it down. And then 9 times 4c is 36c. Now, some of you may be wondering, is it possible to have two different variables in the same problem? Absolutely. You can have a million different variables in the same problem. It doesn't matter. All right, so now that we've done some forwards distributive property, I'm going to go back and now show you backwards distributive property with variables. It is very, very similar to normal backwards distributive property. All I'm doing is adding in a variable. So, step 1, you're going to ignore the variable, okay? Step 2, you're going to find the GCF of the two numbers. That's the same thing that you've been doing. So if this is your problem here, 30x plus 45, you're going to ignore the variable, pretend it isn't there. Find the GCF of 30 and 45. Your GCF is 15. Step 3, you're going to set up your forwards distributive property parentheses like you normally would, and you're going to put the GCF on the outside line like you normally would. Now, here's the only difference. Go back to your original problem and find out what your variable was. It was an x, right? Okay, was it with the first term or was it with the second term? Well, it was with the first term, okay? So we're going to put it at the end of the first line right there. That's all you have to do. Now, step 4 is the same exact process as what you used to do. 30 divided by 15 is 2. And remember, you always put the number in front of the variable. 45 divided by 15 is 3. And so your final answer is 15 parentheses 2x plus 3. And that's it. All right, so let's do some practice problems with that. So here we have 18x minus 27. So we need to go ahead and find the GCF of 18 and 27. So I'm going to break up 27 3 and 9, and I can break up 9 into 3 and 3. 18 can break up into 2 and 9, and I'm going to break up 9 into 3 and 3. And it looks like I have some matches here, so I have 3's that match, and I have another 3 that matches, and so 3 times 3 is 9, so that's my GCF. So I'm going to set up my forwards distributive property lines. My operation is subtraction, so I'm going to put that inside. Now, I still put my GCF on the outside like normal. The only new thing that I do is I take that x. It's with the first term, so I just put it at the end of the first line. Now, everything else is normal. 18 divided by 9 is 2. 27 divided by 9 is 3. And I'm done. 9 parentheses 2x minus 3. That is my final answer. Just like normal backwards distributive property, I can use forwards distributive property to check my answer. 9 times 2x is 18x. Bring down my subtraction sign. 9 times 3 is 27. And that matches my original problem right here. Let's try the next one. So I need to find the GCF of 14 and 21. I can break up 14 into 2 and 7, and then I can break up 21 into 3 and 7. Alright, so I have 7's that match. 7 is my GCF, and I'm going to set up my lines for forward distributive property. I have addition on the inside. Now, 7 is my GCF. That goes on the outside line. My variable is D, and it's in the first term, so it goes on the first line. Everything else is the same. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 21 divided by 7 is 3, and I'm done. 7 parentheses 2D plus 3, close parentheses, and I'm done. Remember, you can use forwards distributive property to check your answer, and I'll show you what that looks like one more time. 7 times 2D is going to be 14D. Bring down your addition sign. 7 times 3 is 21. That matches what is right up here. Alright, let's take a look at the next problem. We have 16 and 32. We need to find the GCF. We can break up 16 into 2 and 8, break up 8 into 2 and 4, break up 4 into 2 and 2. Go over to 32. I can break it up into 2 and 16, break up 16 into 2 and 8, break up 8 into 2 and 4, and then break up 4 into 2 and 2. Alright, I have a lot of 2's that match. So I have 1, 2, I have another 2, I have another 2, and I have another 2. When I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. Alright, set up my lines for forward distributive property. My operation inside is subtraction. Now, I have 16 on the outside. That's my GCF. I have my variable as n, and it's with the first term. So I'm going to put it right there. 16 divided by 16 is 1. 32 divided by 16 is 2. Now, if you remember back to our first expressions unit, or first expressions lesson where we were talking about expressions vocabulary, you do not have to put the 1 there if you don't want to. It stays as an invisible 1. If you want to put it there, you're more than welcome to. If you don't want to put it there, that's perfectly fine too. Generally, it is not written there, but if it makes you feel better to write it, that's fine. When I write it, when I write a letter, I do not write the 1 in front of it, just so that you know. Okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it the cleaner way, but I will not mark it wrong on a test or a quiz if you write a 1 there. Alright, and that is your final answer. Okay, so here we have 9 and 30. I can break up 9 into 3 and 3, and I can break up 30 into 3 and 10, and I can break up 10 into 2 and 5. And I have 1, 3 that matches, and so that's my GCF. I'm going to set up my forwards distributive property. I have addition on the inside. My GCF is 3. My variable is x, and it's on the first term. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 30 divided by 3 is 10. And I am done. And I can always, always, always double check my answer by doing forwards distributive property. Alright, here are 4 problems for you to try. The first 2 are forwards, the second 2 are backwards. Go ahead and try and we'll compare our answers. Alright, if you're not done, go ahead and hit the pause button, and if you are done, let's go ahead and go over the answers. So for the first one, you should have distributed the 6 and gotten 6n plus 6 times 4 is 24. For the second one, you should have distributed the 5 and gotten 15x minus 20y. Don't forget that minus sign. The third one, the GCF is 9, and so you have a 9 on the outside, and then 7g minus 4 on the inside. For the fourth one, the GCF is 22, not 11, so be careful. So 22 on the outside, and then 3c plus 2 on the inside. All right, that is the end of this lesson. We will do more practice in class, but make sure you ask me any questions that you have.